This cell is having the four walls. One wall is here, one wall is here, one is here, one is here. The wall which is present towards the lumen, this wall we call as apical wall. This we call as apical wall, and this wall we call as basal wall. This apical we also call as luminal side, and this is called as contra-luminal side. Contra means opposite, so contra-luminal side. Now on the back side, what is there? There is the blood vessel. So suppose there is the blood vessel. This is the blood vessel which is present over here. Now what happens, guys? We know that there is a small structure is present over here, and this small structure will produce what? This is our pancreas, and it produces the enzymes for the digestion, and it also releases what? Insulin. Right, guys? Insulin. Now what happens? Now please pay attention, guys. What happens? That whenever you consume the glucose, this glucose is present over here, and now this glucose need to go where? This glucose wants to go into the cell and at the mitochondria. At which level? At the mitochondria. So this need to go over here and this need to reach at the mitochondria. Once it will reach at the mitochondria, then only the glycolysis will be occur and it will produce the ATP, and this ATP will be utilized by the cell. So now the question comes, from this glucose, when this is present into the lumen of the intestine, from here, how will it reach into the cell? So guys, what happens? This glucose, you can see over here, that this glucose first need to cross via this apical wall of the intestine, then it will need to cross via the basal wall of the intestine, and then it will enter into the blood. Through this blood, this will need to enter inside the cell. So again, it need to cross the cell membrane. So now how this glucose is going to be cross this cell membrane? We know cell membrane is either made up of the protein or either the lipid. So this glucose is water soluble, so definitely it will cross via the protein layer. And this protein layer are actually the having channel for the glucose. And these channels are called as GLUT, that we call as glucose transporter, or also called as SGLT, right? It is lagging. Please let me know, guys. Still it is lagging. Reach into the cross via this basal wall. Look at over here, guys. What is the aim for this glucose? The aim of this glucose is that this glucose should reach into the cell, and into the cell, into which structure? Mitochondria. This mitochondria will utilize this glucose and will do the glycolysis, and it will release the ATP for the cell. But reaching this glucose into the cell up to the mitochondria, first it need to cross via this apical wall, then it need to cross via this basal wall, then it will enter into this blood, then from the blood, this will enter into where? It will again enter or cross via the cell membrane. So again it requires the channels, because cell membrane is made up of what? It is made up of the lipid or the protein. Right? Guys, it is lagging. Okay, so let me cut. I'm stopping the streaming, and again with I hope now it is not lagging. Okay, so we were talking about that how basically these channels are present on the cell membrane, and I was explaining that suppose you consume the gulab jamun. Gulab jamun will contain the glucose, and this glucose is present into the lumen. Now what happens? We know that this glucose is ideally should reach where? This glucose ideally should reach from here. It must reach from here into the cell, and into the cell in which organelle? To the mitochondria. Once the mitochondria will receive the glucose, then only this glucose will break, and this will produce the new ATP molecule for functioning of the cell. But entering this glucose into the cell, first this glucose need to cross many or different cell membrane levels. First of all, this glucose need to be crossed via this membrane, then it need to be crossed via this membrane, right? First of all from this membrane, then from this membrane, then it will enter into the blood. After entering into the blood, again it will need to cross via this cell membrane. So now what happens? We know the cell membrane is made of either the protein layer or either the lipid layer. So this glucose is water soluble. So basically it will cross the cell membrane via the protein layer, and this protein layer is having the channel for the glucose. And two type of glucose channel is there. Number one is GLUT, another one is SGLT. So this glucose, remember guys, glucose is having two channels. That is, number one is SGLT and another one is GLUT. SGLT stands for sodium glucose linked transporter, and GLUT is glucose transporter. This is the glucose transporter. Now we know that there is a two type of glucose channel, SGLT and the GLUT. Now what happens, guys? This SGLT which is present and the GLUT is there. This SGLT is two type. Number one is SGLT1 and SGLT2. SGLT1 and SGLT2. Now this GLUT, this is 5 types. So GLUT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 type of GLUT is there. 5 type of GLUT is there. Right? Now please pay attention. What happens? First of all, this glucose need to cross this apical wall, and this apical wall contain the channel over here. This is containing the channel over here. This is having a channel over here, right? And this channel we call as SGLT. SGLT. This channel we call as SGLT. Now, another channel is present over here on the basal wall, and this channel we call as GLUT, right? This channel we call as GLUT. So we know that SGLT SGLT is a secondary active transport and GLUT is a facilitated transport. So SGLT, this requires the energy and this does not require the energy, right guys? So now if this glucose from the intestine, it is going to be absorbed first of all in the enterocyte from the apical wall. This is called as secondary active transport because this glucose is crossing via the SGLT channel. So this is called a secondary active transport. When this glucose is getting out via this basal wall of the enterocyte, this is a GLUT transportation. So this is your facilitated type of diffusion, right? So this is a facilitated type of diffusion. Now, so here what happens? Why we are calling it as SGLT? Actually, what happens, guys, that this glucose is not going alone. This glucose will go with the help of sodium. So this is having the two binding site over here, and this binding site, one is for sodium and another one is for glucose, right? One for sodium, another one is for glucose. Now when the sodium and glucose both binds over here, then only this channel will be open, and once this channel will be open, this glucose will be entered, right? So that is why we call it sodium glucose linked transporter. Now what happens? Then this glucose will get out by this GLUT channel, which is on the basal wall, and then this glucose will enter where? This will enter into this blood. Now we know that into the blood, normally right now you are not eating. Still, if I check your random blood sugar RBS, it will show me that you are having around 125 milligram per deciliter sugar is there. It means all the time in the blood, some amount of the glucose should be present. And what will happen? Where this glucose will be utilized? From the blood, this glucose is going to be utilized into the cell. So again, if it is need to cross the cell, this need to cross the cell membrane, and this cell membrane again having the channel over here, right? And this channel is actually presents like this. So I'm just making another cell over here so that you can able to understand better. So suppose this is the cell, this is the cell, this is the nucleus, and this need to cross via this channel, and this channel is GLUT channel, right? This is the GLUT channel. Now what happens, guys? When this glucose need to enter into the cell, this must be crossed via this GLUT channel, and ideally this GLUT should remain closed, right? Then only this glucose will not able to enter, because if this GLUT on the cell will remain open, what will happen? All the glucose, whatever glucose present into the blood, all the glucose will enter into the cell, will be utilized and produce the ATP, and the sugar level in the blood is going to be dropped down. So you don't want to be in hypoglycemic condition, you don't want to be in hyperglycemic condition. So what happens, guys? How this glucose from the blood enters into the cell? This enters when the GLUT channel will be open. And now who will give the command to open this GLUT channel? We know guys, who is the director of the cell? Director of the cell is nucleus. So whenever nucleus will give the command, then only this GLUT will open. And from where this nucleus will get the command? So nucleus will get the command from the boss. So what happens? This boss is connected. This boss is connected via the vagus nerve, because who knows? Boss knows that you consume the food. So this is connected via the vagus nerve to this area, and this nerve will give the basis to the beta cell, and this beta cell will release what? This will release the insulin, and this insulin will mix where, guys? This insulin will mix into the blood. Now what will happen? This insulin is present into the blood. This insulin not able to enter inside the cell. So what will happen? This insulin will activate the receptor which is present on the cell membrane. So this cell membrane contains the receptor for the insulin, and this receptor we call as tyrosine kinase receptor. Tyrosine kinase receptor. This tyrosine kinase receptor will bind with this insulin, and what will happen? Now this will give the message to whom? This will give the message to the nucleus. Once the nucleus got the message, okay, that insulin is there. Now this nucleus will open this GLUT, and this GLUT once will be open, what will happen? This glucose will start coming into the cell. So guys, this is how this glucose enters into the cell. That is why we require the insulin. Guys, what will happen? Suppose if this insulin is not there, what do you think? Can this glucose will be this GLUT channel will be open? Will this GLUT channel will be open if no insulin is there? What do you think? GLUT channel will be open if no insulin message is coming? No. And if no glucose channel is opening, no GLUT is opening, what will happen? Glucose will be higher in the blood, and that can lead to hyperglycemia. This condition we call as diabetes mellitus. So this diabetes mellitus means diabetes doesn't mean the meta. Diabetes means the polyuria. If higher amount of the glucose present into the blood, what our body wants? Our body wants to remove this extra glucose. If it is not going into the cell, our body wants to remove it from the kidney. So what happens? The formation of urine is going to be increased. That can lead to polyuria, and that is condition we call as diabetes. So diabetes means polyuria. There are two types of diabetes: diabetes mellitus due to the glucose, diabetes insipidus due to the ADH hormone. So always remember, guys, diabetes means polyuria. There, this type of diabetes which is happening over here, this diabetes we call as diabetes mellitus. There are two types of diabetes mellitus. Number 1, type 1. Number 2 is type 2. Now type 1, what is happening? Why the diabetes mellitus is there? Because diabetes mellitus is there because no GLUT is opening. If no GLUT is opening, that can lead to diabetes mellitus. What could be the two possible reasons? Number 1 reason. That number 1 reason is if suppose no insulin is there, so nobody is binding with the receptor, no GLUT is opening. So this condition we call as diabetes mellitus type 1. And in this, what is the treatment? If no insulin inside, from outside you can give the insulin, right? So that is the condition we call as insulin diabetes mellitus type 1. So this is your type 1 insulin dependent. Insulin dependent. Now what happens in type 2? In type 2, suppose insulin is there, but receptor damage. If receptor is damaged, guys, what will happen? This insulin not able to bind with this receptor. Again, no activation of this process, no opening of the GLUT, and no glucose diffused inside the cell. Again, the hyperglycemia. Guys, remember, who is giving the command to generate this receptor? This command generation could be done by the nucleus. And nucleus, if want, this receptor production can be more. If nucleus wants, this receptor production can be less. Now, this nucleus can be controlled by any drug. So there is no drug which can produce the new receptor on the cell. This is only the job of nucleus. If nucleus wants, new receptor will be produced. If nucleus don't want, no receptor can be produced. So this is the condition. In this, there is no receptor is produced, and if no receptor is produced, guys, in this condition we call as again diabetes mellitus type 2. In this, already insulin is there, so no role of the insulin over here. So this we call as insulin independent diabetes mellitus, right? So this is the insulin independent diabetes mellitus. So this is how the diabetes mellitus can be happen. There are the two possible reasons. If no insulin is there, due to the problem of the pancreas, because suppose beta cell could be gone, acute pancreatitis is there, chronic pancreatitis is there. In this condition, no insulin will release, so no GLUT will be open, glucose will remain high in the blood. So this is how this glucose will actually goes. So look at over here. This glucose can enter first of all via SGLT, and then via GLUT. Now how the question can be formed? So question is there. Suppose the question is there. Glucose absorption in intestine is which type of transport? Glucose absorption in intestine is which type of transport? Options are facilitated diffusion, secondary active, primary active, and simple diffusion. Simple diffusion. Please answer me, guys. Yes. Glucose absorption in intestine is which type of transport? Facilitated diffusion, secondary active transport, primary active transport, simple diffusion. Yes. Yes, guys. Absolutely right, guys. So this right answer of this question is secondary active transport, right? So right answer of this question is secondary active transport. But the same question. And now I'm telling glucose absorption in intestine. And I'm just mentioning over here glucose absorption in intestine from basal side. From basal side. Now please answer. Glucose absorption in intestine from basal side is which type of transport? Yes, guys. Absolutely wonderful, guys. Wonderful. Very good. Well done. So guys, you can see that's now you can easily got the answer. That's why this is facilitated diffusion, because it is mentioning that this is from the basal side, and from the basal side, which channel is there? Glucose channel is there, and glucose is a facilitated type of diffusion. So if it is simply asking the glucose absorption in intestine is which type of transport, not mentioning whether on apical, whether on basal. So initially it must be cross the apical wall. So this is the HCLT called a secondary active transport. If it is mentioning whether on apical, whether on basal, accordingly you have to be answered, right, guys? So I hope now you can easily understand. This question asked multiple times in your exam, and this is how you can easily, in the very simplest form, you can easily answer this question. So I hope now all you could understand that's how this glucose is going to be inside, right? And why we require the insulin. This insulin is not there. This insulin will not help to glucose absorption inside the cell, and this cell will not able to produce the ATP, right? So this is how this glucose absorption is going to be happen. So this thing you now understand very well. Now the next part. Guys, I just told you all the time that there is sodium, potassium, ATP. But my question is that, sir, why we require this sodium? Sir, why we require this sodium and potassium and calcium? Guys, remember, these three ions of the body, they are very, very essential ions. Sodium, potassium, calcium. Now we are going to talk about what is the role of these ions in the body. Why we require these ions? Guys, what happens? Now what happens? That inside of our body, we are like a robot. If we are like a robot, what happens? That inside of us, we require the electricity. If no electricity is there, some of the area could not be able to do the function like the heart. Heart continuously pumping the blood. This is how this pumping the blood, because it is having the electricity generation. Who is generating the electricity? We are not connected by any electric cable. Then how the electricity generation is happening inside of us? We know that electricity generates always due to the movements of the ions. So the same thing happens inside the body. The ion is actually moved inside and outside, and they can produce the electricity, right? Now what happens? How they produce the electricity? So please pay attention. Suppose this is your cell. Very important part is come. This is your cell, right? I don't know your name, paracetamol. You just mention your name here. ये वर्कबुक बाय से भी ज़्यादा भर गई. I understand, because in the first chapter only, the many things I am just writing in the other pages, because this is the basic part. If you could understand this basic part well, then only the systemic physiology is going to be like a peanuts for you. This is going to be laddu for you. आपको तुरंत अच्छे समझ आ जाएगी. That's why I am just putting my effort to explain you the basic part, so that you can easily understand. And guys, believe me, that once you understand this part, later on when it's going into the systemic physiology, immediately you will answer me, will tell me, sir, this is happening. This is happening due to this reason. All of this part is going to be happen like this. Okay. Now, so look at over here. Now, this is the cell. In this cell, what happens? If we want to generate the electricity, some ions movement is happening. And always remember, guys, during the resting condition, when the cell is sleeping, during this time, whatever current generation is there, this current we call for the cell we call as potential. What we call this? We use the name potential. So potential means current. And when the cell is doing the rest, during that time, whatever current is there, that we call as resting membrane potential. What we call this? Resting membrane potential. So now you understand that this is resting membrane potential. Guys, always remember, during the rest, inside cell, it is always negative. And inside of the cell, the most positive ion which is present, that is your potassium. And the most negative ion that is present is your phosphate. Outside cell, the most positive ion which is present, that is the sodium, and if one positive is there, one negative will also live, and the most negative outside of the cell is chloride, right? So most positive ion inside the cell is potassium, most positive ion outside of the cell is sodium, most negative ion inside the cell is phosphate, most negative ion outside of the cell is chloride, right? And remember, guys, there is words we call as cation. Cation means positive ion, and anion means negative ion. So now the first question comes. First of all, please pay attention. Very single line question asked multiple times in your exam. What is the most abundant intracellular cation? Please answer me. What is the most abundant intracellular cation? Yes. What is the most abundant intracellular cation? Yes, please answer. Most abundant intracellular cation. Yes, guys. Very good. So this is potassium. Well done. Now please tell me, what is the most abundant extracellular cation? What is the most abundant extracellular cation? Most abundant extracellular cation. Yes, everybody is right. Most abundant extracellular cation is sodium. Very good. Now please tell me, what is the most abundant intracellular anion? Most abundant intracellular anion. Yes, guys. Most abundant intracellular anion. Yes, this is phosphate. And what is the most abundant extracellular anion? Most abundant extracellular anion. Most abundant extracellular anion. Yes, it is chloride. Well done. So now see, these single line questions, they are multiple times in your exam. Very simple question. Easily you can answer within few seconds and you can move to the next question. Right guys? Yes. So well done. Now please pay attention. Now if you understood that inside potassium is more, phosphate is more, outside sodium is more, chloride is more. Now please pay attention. We are during resting condition. The inside cell is always negative. And this is negative how much? This is negative. Inside cell is always negative. And during resting, outside cell is always positive. Guys, this cell wants to generate electricity inside, not outside. And if it is going to generate the inside, how to be generated? If you will attach negative to negative, what will happen? This will not produce any electricity. Positive to positive, no electricity. But positive to negative, once you attach, this start producing the electricity. So what happens? If this cell wants to make the electricity, this area should become positive. And once it will become positive, it will start creating the electricity. And now what happens, guys? Then talking about the nerve fiber, the nerve which is taking the signal from one area to another area. So the resting membrane potential of the nerve fiber is always minus 70 millivolt. How much? Minus 70 millivolt. Minus 70 millivolt. So this is minus 70 millivolt. Now what happens if this cell wants to do the function or want to generate the current?